Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfaraz with the economic news of the day. Coming up, commercial battle over a symbol of resistance, and Roman Abramovich's growing appetite for the startup nation. First, the headlines. Investors exited crowded positions in the US dollar as the Federal Reserve wrapped up its two-day policy meeting on Wednesday. The greenback's broad retreat followed a string of soft US data that might push back the day when the Fed starts lifting rates. The Fed has so far played down weak data in hopes of a rebound in the second quarter. Asian share markets also continued their retreat from seven-year peaks, with the MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan falling 0.9%. Ukraine's Prime Minister Petro Poroshenko asked allies skeptical of sending weapons to Kiev to instead consider boosting foreign investment. European leaders on Monday resisted Ukraine's demands for peacekeepers to stabilize its war-torn east for fear of escalating the conflict with Russia. Instead, EU leaders pressured Ukraine's government to speed up reforms, cleaning up Ukrainian politics and business in return for closer ties with the bloc. Poroshenko said he aimed for Ukraine to be ready to apply for EU membership within 5 years, but warned the country first needs more help to stabilize the east.
We do understand that not everyone in the EU and even in the world is supportive of an idea to supply a defensive weapon to Ukraine. But the thing is that if we cannot get military boots on the ground, we ask to have business shoes on the ground.
Qatar officially unveiled what it says is the world's biggest environmental project, a $1 billion plant to capture wasted gas. The Jetty boil-off gas recovery project would capture enough gas to power 175,000 cars per year, or 300,000 homes. It also allows Qatar, the world's largest producer of liquefied natural gas, to recover a further 29 million cubic feet of gas per year, saving the equivalent of 1.6 million tons of CO2. Some 3,500 workers and 22 million man-hours went into construction of the plant, which saves gas normally burned off when fuel is transported onto ships. And given controversy over human rights abuses among foreign workers in Qatar, who make up nearly 90% of the population, officials were careful to note they were not mistreated.
And I think we have, in the oil and gas industry, demonstrated again and again how much care we take, in ensuring that we have our workforce that works here is put in the best conditions to work in, the complexes that they have here for accommodating all the laborers that are here.
China has the second largest wine growing area in the world after Spain, according to the International Organization of Vine and Wine. The figures of 2014 showed China had nearly 2 million acres of land devoted to wine growing, compared with 2.5 million acres in Spain. Though France was pushed to third place in terms of area, it remained the biggest producer globally and earned the most from wine exports, raking in $8.4 billion. The United States remains the biggest consumer, with 13% of the global intake, followed by France and Italy. Whereas China has rapidly emerged as a major player in viniculture, Europe has purposefully shrunk its vineyards to improve quality and push up prices. Volkswagen's first quarter profit soared 17%, helped by improving European car demand and a cost-cut drive at the company. Operating profit jumped to 3.33 billion euros from 2.86 billion a year earlier. Quarterly sales of VW cars in high-margin Western European markets rose 6.5%, offsetting declines in the US and China. European car sales in general made their biggest leap in a year in the first quarter as new passenger car registrations rose 10.6% from last year. Kufiyas have long been both a symbol of Arab resistance as well as a counterculture fashion statement among young Westerners. But given the high demand for the controversial scarf, China and India have flooded the market with cheaper counterfeits.
In the old city of Jerusalem, tourists stroll for colorful souvenirs to bring home. One item is ubiquitous, the famous patterned black and white headscarf known as the kufiye. Over the years, it's become a worldwide symbol of Palestinian resistance.
It may be stylish for some people, but I don't wear it because I think it is stylish. For me, it is kind of a solidarity stand.
Most of the kufiyas are produced locally in this textile mill in the West Bank city of Hebron. The Hirbawi factory has been around since 1961 and prides itself for its Made in Palestine stamp. It's endured through conflict, one Palestinian uprising, and the rigors of daily life in the Israeli-occupied territories. But at the start of the last decade, it was forced to fold temporarily in the face of strong competition from China and India, who flooded the market with cheaper counterfeits.
We had to close the factory altogether for almost 5 years. Then we decided to improve the quality of our products, so we could compete in terms of quality rather than prices, because in terms of prices, we'll never be able to compete.
Each year, the factory sells around 30,000 kufiyas, of which only 2 or 3% are sold locally, while the rest go overseas, mainly to Europe. That success can be put down to the influence of one man, Yasser Arafat, the late Palestinian leader and icon of the resistance, who was hardly ever pictured without it. Shop owners in Palestinian territories have since learned to adapt to international demands.
Some tourists want to buy cheap souvenirs, so we have cheap kufiyas that we sell for $6 to $7. And if they want better quality, we also sell kufiyas for $19 to $20.
The traditional black and white kufiye has also gone through a makeover of sorts. These days, it comes in all hues and shades. This eye-catching fabric with its checkered effect has now spread far and wide.
And we stay in the region as we are joined now by I-24 News correspondent Ayman Sikzak in Financial Bazaar. Ayman, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Binyamin.
It's crazy. It seems like everything is produced in China these days. I mean, we just had Israeli Independence Day, and all the flags people are buying, they're also made in China. It's crazy, no?
That's true, yes. Well, the textile industry is going through some serious changes, especially in the Middle East.
Right.
And, if we look at Hebron and we look at Gaza, it's also suffering the same crisis. Textile in Gaza was one of 3 main exports, one of the 3 main economic factors that kept Gaza up and going with food processing and furniture, producing furniture. Now, before the Israeli imposed blockade on Gaza, about 85% of all products from Gaza went to Israel and the West Bank, and a huge part of that was textile. But the Israeli NGO Gisha, which studies Gaza and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict on a continuous basis, shows us that the textile industry in Gaza has pretty much dissimated since then. It's not existent anymore. They're also pretty much buying stuff from China. China is taking over in a passive way as well.
Right. What are the expectations here in terms of the industry there? In terms of the economy in general?
Well, what Gisha is saying in the study is that if the blockade is lifted, about 30 to 90% of all products from Gaza will go back to Hebron as well, which we've just heard of. In 2014, about 30 tons of vegetables from Gaza went to Hebron, which is a huge amount considering how small Gaza is. And that's also been seriously damaged. So the only option for Gaza's economy to revive itself is the lifting of the blockade, and that doesn't seem very likely at the moment.
No, I guess until peace is actually a fact, or at least people are working towards peace, it seems like the status quo is what we're going to see.
We have to continue hoping for peace, also for the economy, but for better reasons as well.
Right. What else is going on here in the Middle East?
Well, one country in the Middle East that's not suffering from a textile crisis is Turkey. Pakistani companies have been to Turkey in the past month, offering them textile business opportunities and wanting to benefit from Turkey's rich manufacturing in textile and the huge procedures that go on there in the textile industry. They're saying that Turkey really is the next capital of textile in the Middle East. We're going to hear a lot more about Turkey in the textile industry.
I'm sure I'm excited that you're going to tell us in Financial Bazaar when you come again on the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Binyamin.
Thank you. Roman Abramovich, a self-made Russian billionaire who rose from rags to riches during the Russian economy's transition, is increasingly involved in the Israeli economy. With a special appetite for startups, Israel provides fertile ground for Abramovich's investment goals.
Roman Abramovich is a jack of all trades and a multimillionaire thanks to oil and Russian gas. The 137th on the world's richest list is famous for having bought the Chelsea Football Club in 2001, with which he won the Champions League in 2011. Lately, it is Israel that stands out in relation to him, though. His taste for startups have made headlines. First of all, a $10 million investment in StoreDot early in 2014, which he was attracted to for its high potential.
What we have here is a model of Galaxy S5 that is modified with special connectors and our own battery. And we are putting it into a dedicated charger. This model will charge in 2 minutes for 100% of the battery.
The first models are expected to ship in 2016, but they still need to negotiate partnerships with major companies in the mobile phone industry. But they won't stop there. For them, the future is the electric car.
We are now building a prototype with new funds that will allow us to show in 5 minutes of charging how a car can drive for 300 miles.
Finding Israeli startup gold is also the goal of Mor Asiya and Sheli Chodmoel, who are experts in the advanced ecosystem of Israeli high-tech. They created iAngels, a crowdsourcing platform, last year. The goal is to connect investors and handpicked startups. Of the $2.5 million collected for their platform, Abramovich put up $2.25 million.
Basically, one of the leading angel investors in Israel has recommended Roman Abramovich to meet with us and to invest in us because it's a very smart and efficient way to create a foothold in Israel.
Over the past year, 18 startups were funded for a total amount exceeding $5 million through their platform. If crowdfunding continues to increase globally as it did in 2014 by 167%, iAngels may be at the top of that heap.
We're going to see consolidation in the equity crowdfunding industry, and I think that the equity crowdfunding platforms that will survive and that will thrive in the future are the ones that do provide investors with high-quality deal flow, with portfolio management tools that allow people to track their portfolios.
A simple way to send music to one another.
The most recent focus for Abramovich has been Music Messenger. The oligarch has invested $15 million of the $30 million collected by the service. The application already has 1 million users, and it allows the transmission by email of his favorite songs to a contact list. This is the 5th investment in a year for Abramovich, and this particular hotel in the heart of Tel Aviv was his 6th, which cost over $25 million.
It's been several months since we covered the economic impact of the racial wars in the United States. But following the recent outbursts in Baltimore, where about a quarter of the residents live below the poverty line, we're joined now by I-24 News journalist Daniel Roth for a closer look in Media Watch. Daniel.
How's it going?
Good. So tell me about Baltimore, as they say.
Yes, Baltimore, there's rage in the streets. Freddie Gray, 25-year-old, was found dead after being in police custody. We've seen days of protests, the vast majority of which have been peaceful, as well as days of riots. We've seen a lot of violence and destruction going on, both police violence and citizen violence. Right. Underlying all of this, something that everyone from Barack Obama, President Obama, to the COO of the Baltimore Orioles, to gang members interviewed on the streets, is saying underlying all of this is actually economics. When you look at Baltimore, there's some good news, like in 2013, 2014, job growth was a little better than Maryland. These are these small numbers people point to, right. But when you look at Freddie Gray's neighborhood, over 50% unemployment. When you look at Baltimore as a whole, over 10% unemployment. A quarter of Baltimore residents are living under the poverty line. This is why everyone's talking about this rage being at the intersection, we've spoken about this before, that intersection in America of race and class, where you find that by and large, minority groups are the poorest among Americans.
When you look at the facts and figures, essentially this has been a time bomb waiting to explode. I mean, this is nothing new. Poverty has been around. People have been, you know, so to speak, shafted for decades, for many generations.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, what is it about this particular situation that brings it to the fore? Was it just, you know, the last drop?
Yeah. So, a lot of people on the street there are saying that Freddie Gray was a spark for something that's been brewing really for decades. There's actually been destroyed property that hasn't been fixed since riots after Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered in 1968. So that's how much neglect you're talking about. You're talking about a city that hasn't taken care of its citizenry.
Okay, well, we'll see how that all works out in the end. Thanks for joining us, Daniel Roth.
Thank you.
That is the end of the Economy Magazine, your daily source for economic and financial reports at I-24 News. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares. Thanks for joining us, and do watch us again tomorrow.